daily life of Palestinians in under occupation. I'm going to start off, I'm going to introduce our speakers and our panelists in a moment, but I'm going to start off with a little presentation for you that will explain what we're about and who we're going to be talking to today. So this is the presentation. And there we go. Okay, so today's presentation is called "What's It Like to Be a Christian in Palestine Today?" And we have two guest speakers, Michel Awad and Terry Boullata, and they will be joining us shortly. I'll be introducing them in a few moments. This session is organized by the Ottawa Forum on Israel-Palestine. It's a small Ottawa-based NGO. The Ottawa Forum on Israel-Palestine can be found at www.ottawaforumip.org. If you go to our website, you'll see our objectives, you'll see our list of members of our advisory council, and you'll see YouTube links to webinars that we've previously undertaken. This is one of a series of webinars. Our next one will be on June the 3rd. It will be with a man named Jonathan Cook. Jonathan is a British journalist living in Nazareth. Jonathan married a Palestinian citizen of Israel, and after 10 years decided to become a citizen of Israel. And in the process, he learned, it took him 8 years to be able to do that successfully. And his process of doing that is a case study which explains a lot about the nature of Zionism, what it means to be a Jewish state. Jonathan is a very good presenter, and I think you'll find that very interesting. Today, our session is starting now. J'aimerais souhaiter la bienvenue aux participants francophones. Our session will be in English because our Palestinian counterparts speak English, but questions dans la langue française sont tout à fait acceptables et je ferai mon possible, ou Paul Bard ferait son possible pour les traduire, les apporter aux participants. I'm starting off with a little background. At 10:15, we'll get into an introduction of the panelists and start the panel discussion. And then at 10:45, we will have questions and answers from the audience. And I ask you if you would please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen for that. You're allowed to and able to use the chat function if you want, but my colleague Grafton Ross, who is the vice chair of OFIP and also our head of research, will be monitoring the questions in the Q&A function and trying to pitch them to our speakers. And we will adjourn at 11:30. So let's just do a quick review so we understand the parameters. And some of you will know this already with no problem, others won't. We're talking first of all about the area. You see here a map taken off the internet. There is Israel or Israel-Palestine or Palestine, this light covered area. It's surrounded by Egypt in the bottom left-hand corner, Jordan on the east, Syria on the northeast, and then Lebanon at the very top. The area that's in the very light color is what Canada recognizes as Israel. And the population of Israel is about 8 million people, of whom about 6.5 million are Jews and about 1.5 million are non-Jews. Some of those are Christians, most of those are Muslims. Then in the very center of it here, we have Jerusalem. Jerusalem has a population of about 1 million people. In the West Bank, which is this kidney-shaped beige-colored area, the population is approximately 3 million people, including about 600,000 Jewish settlers that Canada and the international community say are illegal settlers in the West Bank. Down in this corner down here, we have Gaza. Gaza has a population of about 2 million people. Now, Christians live all over this area, but they are in total a tiny minority, around 1 or 2% of the total population. That population has varied over time. Of course, Christianity arose around the 1st century BC with Jesus. The area became majority Christian and was majority Christian when it was under the Romans, because after 300 AD, the Roman Empire became officially Christian. And so Christians were heavily represented there. And then with the 7th century was the Islamic period. Muhammad and the Muslims became a majority. The Crusades tried to reverse that. That didn't last very long. And if you come down to the very bottom here, look at 1922, at the time that Britain took over Palestine. The total population was about 750,000, of whom about 10% were Jews and about 10% were Christians. However, after Britain took over, huge immigration of European Jews brought by 1947 the Jews, most of whom were European, up to 600,000 out of approximately 2 million. And the Christians were 143,000 and the Muslims were a little over 1 million. So the population dynamics had changed quite a bit as a result of the British takeover. Where do Christians live in the Holy Land today? Well, they live in Israel. There's about 160,000 Palestinians living through Israel, particularly in the Galilee, and the largest Christian city, the largest Arab city in Israel is Nazareth. Of course, that's where Jesus' family came from. There are about 10,000 Christians living in Jerusalem. In the West Bank, there's about 40,000 Christians sprinkled out in a number of different cities, including Bethlehem, which of course we all know about, but also Bet Sahor, where Michel Awad is from, and some other little towns as well. And there's even 1,000 Christians in Gaza, down in this bottom corner. But from the Israeli point of view, if anybody has seen the movie The Present, which is about a Palestinian man going to buy a present for his wife, he passes through a checkpoint. And they ask him all kinds of questions at the checkpoint. But the Israelis don't care, says a Palestinian to me. They don't care if we're Christians or Muslims. To them, we're just Arabs, so it doesn't make any difference. There actually is a Christian university in the West Bank. It's called Bethlehem University. And there's a picture of the university on the left in the student cafeteria. In 2002, Bethlehem University was occupied by Israeli troops. And in fact, a tank shell penetrated the library, and that the remnants of that have been made into a reminder in the library in the university. You can see where the shell burst through. Fortunately, nobody was killed. In East Jerusalem, there are also Palestinian Christians. And in fact, I spent an delightful afternoon at an Anglican school in East Jerusalem called St. George's School. I said I was teaching an English class. In fact, I was just chatting with the boys in the school, most of whom were Muslim. And while we might think that's strange, when you think of it, many Canadians might send their children to a Catholic school if they think the quality of the education is better. And Palestinians who have the means will often send their children, even if they are Muslim, will send their children to a Christian school because they think the quality of education will be better. Palestinians in the West Bank, in Israel, oppose the Israeli occupation. Kairos Palestine is kind of an umbrella organization of churches and so on. And they have issued a call asking us to support the BDS movement. They say that BDS, the movement, global campaign to boycott, divest, and sanction, is a way to bring pressure on Israel. Now, to do our work today, the heavy lifting, we have two panelists, two Canadians. Paul Bard is a retired teacher in a school principal, has been a school principal in Ottawa. He's even been a school principal in Germany. And I was thrilled that Paul came with me on a trip in 2019 to visit Israel, Palestine. He will be joined by Catherine Casserly, who is a retired federal public servant. She's worked on many social justice issues. Here's a picture of her getting an award from Jim Watson, the mayor of the city of Ottawa. Now we get to our plat de résistance, our two Palestinian guest speakers. Michel Awad, who is the co-founder and executive director of the Siraj Center. He's very active in the tourism sector, trying to promote tourism to Palestine by Canadians and others. Partly it's a business, of course, but partly because he wants people outside to have a better understanding of Palestine and Palestinians, rather than just going to see the stones and the churches. He'll be joined by Terry Boullata. Terry lives across the wall. She is an Orthodox Christian. Michel is a Catholic Christian. Terry is an Orthodox Christian from East Jerusalem. She's very involved with the Palestinian Youth Association for Leadership and Rights Development, and we're thrilled that they will be with us. Now, I'm going now, so we need your image. We have 106 people on the line. I don't understand, Paul, what I did with your video, but I will try to find it while you guys carry on your conversation.
Peter,
yeah.
Terry had some problem getting in, but she may be in now. I sent her a revised link.
Okay.
That I used.
Okay, thank you. So over to you, Paul and Catherine, to talk to Michel, and we're hoping that our other participant will be in shortly.
I'm going to ask Paul to kind of set the context of what daily life is like, Michel, where you are. Paul?
Oh, yes. So Michel, could you tell us about your background and life as a member of a Christian community?
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure, honor to be with you tonight, and thank you everybody for joining, being part of this webinar. Thanks for all the organizers. My name is Michel Awad. I'm from Beit Sahur. It's a city very close to Bethlehem. I born in Jerusalem and lived in Beit Sahur for a Christian family. We are a Greek Catholic, and I work as an executive director for the Siraj Center. It's a non-profit tour operator that organized trips, experiential tourism to Palestinian and Israelis area. As a part of the community, of the Christian community, my family is Christian who lived here. My grandfather was lived here, and we born here and we grow up here. I studied first at the Greek Catholic Church school in Beit Sahur, and then I continue in the Talitha Kumi school. It's a Lutheran school in Beit Jala. I graduated from the school and then studied tourism management at Bethlehem University. And now I'm a member of the Palestinian Task Force for reopening tourism after COVID. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this webinar. I'm looking forward to answer all your questions.
Michel, one of the things in your video that hopefully we'll get to see shows you walking into Mary's well. And that just fascinated me because, do you actually have reason to believe that that was Mary's well?
Palestine is rich of the history and from the oral history. And the Mary's well in Beit Sahur is part of the oral history of the people who lived here. And they believe that this church was located very close to my home. It's the place where Mary and Joseph, Jesus, when they ran to Egypt, they stopped there, and there was a well where she drank water. And there is several stories, oral stories in our city says that lots of people who were ill, who believes in this story, they drink from this water and they get recovery from their illness. So this is something that our community believes in, and it's a very holy site for our community here in Beit Sahur, and we consider it one of the main top Christian sites beside the Shepherd's Field, because my town is the Shepherd's city where the shepherds was watching their sheep when the angels announced the birth of Jesus. And I'm coming from Beit Sahur. It's the shepherds who announced the birth of Jesus for everybody. So we are the witness of his birth, and we help to spread the birth of Jesus to the world.
Is it easy to access churches? When I was looking at who the Christians are in Palestine and Israel, it's Roman Catholic, Orthodox, Greeks, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Anglicans, kind of quite a mishmash of Christians, if you will. So can they get to church easily? And can they access? Are they held back in any way from doing their religious practices?
I mean, we faced as a Christian lots of challenges and obstacles of visiting churches in Jerusalem or in the, we call it in the Israeli territories. We usually don't easily to get permissions. Like I was prohibited to enter Jerusalem for eight years. I wasn't able to get permission to enter Jerusalem for 8 years. So I wasn't able to visit Holy Sepulchre or to go to the old city of Jerusalem, but I can move easily in Bethlehem area. But also moving outside Bethlehem, I mean within West Bank, I'm facing lots of checkpoints. Like going to Ramallah, you pass checkpoints called container checkpoint, which cuts the West Bank between the north and south. If they just close this checkpoint, you will not be able to cross to Nablus, to Ramallah. So they just block it. If they close it sometimes. You cannot move between the north and the south side of West Bank. So within our cities, we can move easily and visit our churches. But I mean, we need a special permission, which is not easily to get to go to Jerusalem. Now, during the Corona, I mean, we have all been prohibited to go to Jerusalem due to the coronavirus. Until now, most of the people cannot visit Jerusalem. They cannot cross to Jerusalem unless they get a permission, and it's not easy to get because of the coronavirus.
So your life is being significantly impacted by COVID-19 too, then?
Yes. Especially as we are under occupation, our government was very weak to support. I mean, I work in a tourism industry. We didn't get any support from the government. Around 40,000 people who works in the tourism industry, they lost their jobs, and the government couldn't give them any compensation. Most of the families in Bethlehem area, they are the owner of the hotels in Bethlehem. Most of them are Christian, and they are facing lots of issue of paying their loans, because in 2019 the tourism was really boosting here in Bethlehem area. So lots of people invested either to building more roofs on their hotels, or somebody renovated their hotels, so they get loans from the banks. And now they have really suffering from this pandemic, and the government couldn't help us. And as you know, that during 2020, Palestinian Authority stopped taking their tax revenue from Israel, and that really impacted us. So 6-7 months, the public employees couldn't take their salaries, and there was no support from the government. So we really suffered from Corona and from the impact of Corona in 2020. And it was really very hard, because, we are not allowed to go to work in Israeli territories. It's not easy to get the permission of working. And, we are facing an issue of the vaccine. Only 8% of Palestinian population took the vaccine, comparing with Israel, it's around 70%. And if you are not vaccinated, you are not allowed to work in Israeli territories. So we having an issue with the vaccine. All the vaccine we get till now are donations. Till now, we buy vaccine for our people.
Were the Jewish citizens treated differently than Christians and Muslims? Both in the tourism and for the COVID, for the vaccine?
Israeli citizen, let me call this Israeli citizen, being treated differently in Israel than a Palestinians who lives in Palestinian Authority, by under the Palestinian Authority. I mean, there is a Christian who lives in Israel. They will be able to get the vaccine, but we as a Christian living under the Palestinian Authority, due to the absence of the vaccine, we couldn't take vaccine. We really have an issue. And before a month, we had 120% occupancy in hospitals. So we had a big suffer. You couldn't find one issue to we couldn't find one bed at hospitals. Like my father-in-law had an issue, and he was tested positive coronavirus, and we couldn't find a bed for him, so he were treated at his home. We brought all the oxygen equipments, treatment, all the medication he needs. We brought them to him his house, and we were taking care of him.
And you might have got it yourself? I mean, you were being exposed too then.
Yeah. I mean, we managed to do that because we were trying to bring all what he needs from, I mean, especially he couldn't breathe very well. He needs an oxygen machine. And in Beit Sahur, my community, there is a young people who collected money and bought oxygen machines, and they give it to people without any money. So we managed to get one of these machines. And we managed to save him. Thanks God. He suffered a lot, but we managed to save him. But lots of others, I mean, they passed away. Mother of my friend, she passed away. And lots of, I mean, we have in Beit Sahur, we have lots of cases that passed away because they couldn't find a bed in hospitals.
Michel, the next question, I think maybe you started to answer already. How does the Israeli occupation impact on your daily lives? And how much stress and anxiety are caused by the occupation?
Can you just repeat your question? Because I couldn't hear it very well. Sorry for that, Paul.
How does the Israeli occupation impact on your daily lives?
I mean, in our daily lives, I mean, it's really, we are suffering between the checkpoints first. This is one of the things that we are passing in a daily, as a passing through these checkpoints. That if I go to Ramallah, to Jericho, I have to pass these checkpoints, and sometimes there is they close these checkpoints and easy not to. So if I want to go to Ramallah, I think twice before I going there and in. This is number one. The secondly, it's the economic impact. Yes.
What a lot of people may not realize is that the checkpoints are not just between the occupied Palestinian territories and Israel, but there are many internal checkpoints. So when you say you're going from Bethlehem to Ramallah, you're going from one place in the occupied territories to another, but you have to go through checkpoints to get there.
Yes, thank you, Peter, for this clarification. Yes, that's true. I mean, within the West Bank, we pass checkpoints. There is a checkpoint if you want to cross to Ramallah, to the entrance of Ramallah, there's a checkpoint. There's a checkpoint to Nablus. And before 3 days, they closed this checkpoint and people couldn't get out from Nablus. So there is a checkpoint within West Bank. Not only there is a checkpoint if I want to cross to the Israeli territories. I mean, also the impact of the economical impact, which is something that really affected us a lot. I mean, being under occupation, it's not easy to develop your economy. I mean, we rely a lot on the Israelis' economy, like the industrial production. It's not easy to grow it up. It's not easy because we don't control borders. So if I want to import or export anything, it should be under the Israelis' authority, and it's not easy, and it's really too much money. So we are facing lots of economical issues. And also about being under occupation, accessibility. I cannot just move easily between areas. There is some roads that I cannot use. Some roads are not prohibited for a Palestinian to use within West Bank. I cannot drive with my car going to Jaffa, by example. I have to use, if I have permission, I have to use an Israeli car. Also now, as I'm working in tourism, like I give you a very good example how it affected our life. Israel announced that end of June, they will allow some groups to enter Israel, and they listed travel agencies that they are allowed to bring these tourists, and they didn't list any Palestinian tour operator. So it's now a challenge for me to get a permission for a Canadian group to come here, because also they don't need visa to Israel, but they need a special permission due to the pandemic. So I, as a Palestinian tour operator, because I'm not part of their list, I have a challenge in bringing groups during the COVID-19. So looks that I will not be able to bring groups in 2021. And this is not fair competition between me and the Israeli tour operator, who have privilege to bring groups because they are listed and Israel controls the borders. And there is not some news that Israel will not allow any tourists to enter Bethlehem or Palestinian territories because they claim that we are not vaccinated. So we are not safe. And the issue of the vaccine, because we don't have border, we get some confirmation of getting some vaccines, but because it's not approved by Israeli authority, we couldn't bring them because these vaccines will come through Israeli's borders. So I'm giving you a different issue of how it affects too much on our life.
We have a few questions about the practice of your faith. How well are Christians respected or tolerated by the Muslims and the Jewish neighbors?
I mean, in West Bank, I mean, if we just want to, in West Bank, we have Christian and Muslim. I mean, in Israeli territories, there is Christian, Muslim, and Jewish. I mean, honestly, in Palestinian territories, we are well respected, and we have in our cities full freedom to do our celebration. Like last Saturday, we have the Holy Saturday, and there was scouts playing on the streets. We were there is a joyful for this celebration. And we really respected, like on last Sunday, it was an official governmental vacation because of the Easter. So we are well respected by the government, we are well respected by the people, and we have a very good freedom to do our workshops and our celebration. So in West Bank, there's a full freedom, and also in Jerusalem, there is a good respect from our brothers from the Islamic beliefs about our celebration.
Oh, well, that was good to hear. How is the situation of Palestinian Muslims and Palestinian Christians similar, but also different?
Can you repeat your question? I'm sorry, Paul.
Yes, there are Palestinian Muslims and Palestinian Christians. How is their experience, their Christian experience, similar or different?
I mean, honestly, I mean, we have the same experience. I mean, we are feeling we are part of this country. We are a citizen. We are being respected. We have we get our all citizenship privilege. So we can elect, we can get any governmental position. We can be in the army, in the police, in any governmental, and we are full respected, and we are having the same experience. I mean, in all of life issues, we having equal. We getting the equal. Just, you know, we cannot be a president because a president need to be a Muslim or prime minister, but we can be ministers. We can get any job. So we have the same experience, and we are getting the same. I mean, if you go to a court, if you have any issues in a court, they deal with you equal. So we don't feel a difference.
Michel, may I, if you don't mind, I'll jump in again.
Yes.
I think there may be some clarification. You're not saying that you're equal to Israeli Jews, or that you can be, or are you? I mean, you're talking about being able to be in the army and so on and so forth. It sounds like, from what you said, that Palestinian Christians are equal to to Jews and to Palestinian Muslims. Is that what you're saying or not?
You know, Paul asked me about comparing with the Palestinian Muslim. I mean, we have the same quality, but for sure, we are not having the same quality with the Israelis. Especially also Christian who lives in Israel do not get the same equality like the Jewish Israelis. I mean, like if you don't serve, there is most of the Christian in Israel, they don't serve in the army. And if you don't serve in the army, you will not get the same privilege as a citizenship. By easily you get as a Jewish Israelis easily get permission to build a house, but it's very hard for a Christian Israelis to get permission to build a house or extend his house. I mean, Israel, there is, and I mean, I wish that Terry could be part of this call. She can talks a lot about, especially being in Jerusalem, because Terry is a resident in Jerusalem, but she doesn't hold the Israeli citizenship, and that's worse and worse. That it's not easy for her to travel. It's not. She doesn't get the privilege as a citizen. It's not easy to get the same job opportunities. So in Palestine, we get the equal like Palestinian Muslim, but in Israel it's totally different. And that's why I mean Palestinians who live in Israel was against to approve a Jewish state, because that will give a Jewish citizen more privilege than a Christian or a Muslim who lives in Israel. And that's what people ask me, why you are against a Jewish state? It's Israel, it's not Palestine. You shouldn't care. It's not about, it's about that if I will accept a Jewish state, that means I'm making somebody privileged, as I will not accept a Muslim Islamic Palestine. That's what I will be against, to call Palestine Islamic Palestine or a Jewish state or Islamic state for Palestine. I will be against that also. So we want to have an equal in Palestinian territories and in Israel.
Michel, do you have a passport?
Yes, I have a Palestinian passport, but it's not a passport, it's a travel document. Because we are not recognized as a country. So it's a travel document. It's written on its passport, but it's not real because I don't get the privilege. I need visa for most of the countries in the world. It's not all recognized by many countries. And but I am holding a Palestinian passport.
I want to ask a question about the young people for a moment, because they must be very frustrated. In Canada, the young people have basically dropped away from practicing their faith or whatever they were baptized in. In Palestine, are the Christian young people still involved with practicing their religion?
Yes, it's not like before. When I was a child, I mean, it was not, I mean, life is getting more faster, but there is still involvement and there is lots of loyalty of Christian young people to their faith, because we are minority. We are almost 1%. And usually a minority have a feeling inside that we should practice and keep our faith. That is part of our existence. So, I mean, I really like if you just Google to see the Easter celebration in Old City of Jerusalem, you see young people dancing and praying because of the Easter. And these young people are very, very loyal to their faith because they think that being very connected to your faith is part of your existence. That's why you can find that the young Palestinians, still a good percentage are connected, and especially in celebration, you find like most of the young people participate on it. I mean, like other countries, young people not always every Sunday they go to church, but they participate in most of the celebration, faith celebrations. But I want to talk about the young people. I mean, most people, they ask about why people immigrate. I mean, especially young people. I mean, honestly, when I was young, before I get married, I was thinking to immigrate. It's not because I don't feel that I'm connected to this country, but I think that my opportunities are very limited here in this. I cannot become I cannot make a very powerful industrial, or I cannot move as I want. I mean, I feel like always I'm limited. And this for young people who have always the hope of the future and they always dreaming, this country for them means limitations. They feel that they cannot move easily. So uh, this is because of the occupation, especially uh, uh, we faced lots of uh, uh, rise up, and these rise up makes our life really difficult. Closure, curfews. So this is something that makes people really disappointed and want to move. So immigration percentage in Palestine, Christian, especially in Christian, are very high. Not because that we are being harassed by the Muslim community. No, it's because of the situation. If you're born in a country and feel you are limited, that makes you feel that, no, I want to leave. It's not the place where I want to stay.
And where do they go? Where are
They go
Palestinians going
Europe,
to?
America. Most people travel to America. America, I mean, mostly America, because they have relatives there. Europe, it's not easy to migrate, but America, it's, you know, the immigration system in America is easy. So most of the people immigrate to America. And it's just because they want to move out from being limited.
Michel, we have a few questions about political realities.
Please.
So, how are Palestinians surviving in Jerusalem and in the West Bank with the continuous colonization and the new settlement by the Israeli population?
I mean, this is one of the challenges that we are facing. And because, I mean, if you, especially in West Bank in Jerusalem, I mean, the settlements annexation, it's really taking all our lands. I mean, for us, I mean, now, for my children, I will not find a place to build for them, or they have a place where they can build their own house. I mean, some of you maybe were here, but for people who wasn't here, I mean, West Bank are divided between Area A, Area B, and Area C. I mean, the downtown and the city itself, it's Area A, but now it's crowded. There is no free lands. And Area B and Area C, you are not allowed to build in your own land until the Israeli give you a permission. And it's not easy to take a permission. So, I mean, now the issue that all these lands are being taken by the Israelis, and we're losing our lands. We cannot, I mean, as a normal extent of the population, we will not find places to build for our children and grandchildren. That means these children, grandchildren will think directly to immigrants, because they feel that they cannot find the land to build their family or to establish their family. So, I mean, honestly, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, like, as you can see, that there is a huge campaign against buying new houses from the Palestinians for the Jewish settlers, because they want at least just to try as much to reduce the number of Arabs in East Jerusalem. So when there is a final negotiation, they will tell there's no Arabs. Why should you asking for East Jerusalem? You don't have Palestinian living in East Jerusalem, so you shouldn't take it. It's all Jewish. So the same in West Bank, they're doing more settlements. So if we will have a negotiation in the near future, they will say, listen, settlers in West Bank are more than the Palestinians. So you cannot make a state. So all settlements, annexation, is just to make sure that there is no Palestinian state. And it's really destroying our future.
So, Michel, being a minority group, how can your voice be heard in Palestine and Israel?
I mean, in Palestine, I mean, we have, our church leaders are always in a good connection with the government, with the Palestinian government, and our voice are heard. We have 4 ministers in the Palestinian government. The tourism minister, she's a Christian, and we have the media, or what we call media minister, is a Christian. We have the finance minister, is a Christian, and the health minister, she's a Christian. So we have 4 ministers in the government. So these people. Also, we have the presidential committee for Christians, and this is a committee that always close to the president himself and give him all advices about Christian. And so we have and our church leaders, some of them, you know, that some of them were heroes, like Bucci, Michel Sabbah, Riaz Shakur. So these people are well heard, and they know how to make their voices read. And it's always during the first Intifada, and Palestinian Christian was too much involved in the non-violence resistance. And this is very important, non-violence resistance, Palestinian. And non-violence resistance started in my city, Beit Sahur. We were the first to use the non-violence when we refused to pay taxes to the Israeli authority in the first Intifada, using this sample, no taxation without presentation. So Palestinian Christian was very active in non-violence in the first Intifada, and now there is always some active people, Christians. So we are always in the presence, and our voices are always heard. And we have also lots of the Christian leaders in East Jerusalem. They are very famous. Terry is one of them. I'm sorry that she couldn't make it on the link. She is facing an issue with the link, but there is lots of leaders. We have well-known
Michel, let me ask you a question. You mentioned that Beit Sahur, which is predominantly a Christian city in the West Bank, was the leader in this nonviolent resistance, not paying taxes. What happened? Did the Israelis say, okay, you don't need to pay taxes, or what happened to you and to others?
No, I mean, we have a curfew for 40 days. Israelis was just going to each house and asking them to pay taxes. And if they refuse, they take all their furnitures, their cars. And we were in 40 days curfew. And Beit Sahur was in the UN. There was a summit for the UN to end the siege at Beit Sahur. And unfortunately, America used their veto against this resolution. So we were in 40-day siege. We couldn't leave our home.
And do you think that the Israelis knew you were Christian?
They don't care, Israelis. I mean, occupation doesn't care. They don't care about Christian. I mean, I am not allowed to go to Jerusalem because I'm a Palestinian, not because I'm a Christian. If I've been stopped at checkpoint, they don't care. Oh, you are a Palestinian. I'm holding a Palestinian ID. I'm getting harassment by the Israelis occupation, not because I'm a Christian, because I'm a Palestinian. So first, I'm a Palestinian for Israel. So it's not about Christianity.
Michel, I know Palestine has worked hard to get recognized by the United Nations. How do you think United Nations could help Palestine?
I mean, United Nations can help Palestine by just force Israel to implement the about 700 resolution that was being taken against Israel for the favor of Palestine. Till now, none of them been implemented. I mean, only implementing of these resolution, allowing Palestinians to have their own statement. I mean, this is what we are asking for. I mean, unfortunately, every time we have a resolution in the UN, is America use the veto. And also, if they don't use the veto, unfortunately, it's been not implemented.
I have one more question. There's groups like Kairos and Sabeel, who I think are very involved with the Christians in Palestine.
Yes.
What is it that they do? How do they help the situation?
I mean, they help to let the Christian voice be heard by local and internationally, especially internationally. I mean, we as a Christian in Palestine, we counter a lot of questions about what do you think of this conflict. Unfortunately, in some media and in some perception in the world, they think it's a Muslim Jewish conflict. That's why I like to use the word Israel is not the Jewish. Our conflict is not between religious. It's between occupiers and people under occupation. This is what Sabeel try and also Kairos. It's not a faith conflict. It's about the rights of people who living under occupation. So this is what they try to help. And this is every time there is any issue happening here, they try to release a press release to give the Christian voice that we are against this. This is not what Christian is believing in Palestine and in the Israeli territory. So it should be very clear. It's not a faith conflict. People think it's Islamic Jewish, and people think that we as a Christian, as a Palestinian, we are against Jewish. No, this is not true. We have no issue with the Jewish as a faith. We have an issue with Zionism, who use Jewish faith to bring people to settle in my country.
Michel, what message would you like to give Canadian Christians? How could we help?
I mean, it just helped by really understanding the conflict in its right frame. The conflict, as I said, it's not a faith conflict. It's a rights of the Palestinian to get their own independence, to support governments, or to vote for a government that support the justice in our area. I mean, we want only justice. I mean, I personally want justice for Palestinian and Israelis. I'm against any violence for both sides. Our conflict is not against Jewish, it's against Zionism movement who want to destroy our dream to have our own statement.
Thank you. We've had a number of questions come in while you've been talking. So I'm going to ask Grafton if he could raise some of those questions now.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Elizabeth asks, I think I remember that quite a while ago, the Israelis offered to designate Christians as honorary Jews, and the Christians indignantly refused. That may have been a better question for Terry, but if you could address that, Michel.
Just can you repeat the question in other format? I couldn't understand it very well to make sure that I answer it very well. What do you mean?
Elizabeth says that she thinks she remembers that quite a while ago, the Israeli government offered to designate Christians as honorary Jews, but that the Christian community refused.
Sure, I mean, we are a Christian. We respect the Jewish faith. And we know that when Jesus was here, there was a Jewish faith. And Jesus was in that time from a father and Jewish mother. So we as a Christian, we respect this faith. but our problem is not with we will not accept being as a Christian under the Jewish faith. We have our own faith. We believe in Jesus, and this is what we believe on. And this is our identity. I mean, we are a Christian, but also a Palestinian, who been my grandfather was here. And honestly, to be honest with you, Israel works on creating, trying to distinguish Palestinian, so they look that they are privileged than the Muslims, just to create a conflict between we and the Muslims, our neighbors. But this is, we refuse totally. We having the same. It's not about just it's just to call for being a privilege. It's about on the ground. They don't do that. They just say it, but on the ground, they handle us equally like they handle the Muslims. So they try to look that they are supporting Christian because they want to keep, they care about the word, the Christian word support. Because you know that Israel, the most donation comes from the Christians in America. So they do want them to look that they really cares about Christian, but they do not. That's not true. On the ground, that's totally different.
Thank you. Susan is wondering how the Shepherd's Fields Hospital is doing.
Yeah, we have a Shepherd's Field Hospital in Beit Sahur. It's under construction. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, they couldn't continue. They tried to look for support to finalize it. I mean, the building is done, but they still need some medical equipment to make it go on. I mean, the management of the hospital, they really suggested to the Palestinian tourism ministry that they can use it for the COVID, because we faced an issue with beds. But you know, Palestinian Authority are facing financial issue, and especially now during to this COVID, it's not easy to bring medical equipment. Everybody is buying it. So we are a poor country, so it's not easy to purchase such equipment. So we hope that it will open soon. We are in need of such hospitals. Honestly, our medical system are suffering. We have a very weak medical system.
Thank you. One of the attendees asks, are the checkpoints within the West Bank relatively new? That is, within the last 10 years?
No, this is since 80s. The 80s, I mean, that's since long time. I mean, it's, and they increased in the first intifada, increased more and more in the second intifada. And after the second intifada, they kept them. There is some roads are blocked, you cannot use them, they block it. And some roads you have to pass a checkpoint. And like Kalkidia is one of the cities, are sieged with a fence, and there is one gate. So to get in and out, there is one gate you get inside. So this is since long time. I mean, it's about Israel's army. They have the mentality that they should be controlling all security issue in Palestine. So anything happen, they close all these checkpoints so they can control things. So it has been since 80s until now.
Michel, how far is it from, for example, your place in Bet Sahur to, let's say, Nablus? How far in kilometers? How long would it take you? And how many checkpoints might you have to go through?
I think Nablus is almost 60 or 70 kilometers, but it needs 2 hours, 2 hours and a half. First going through Wad al-Nar, the Gadron Valley, which we call it it's the Gadron Valley. There is a checkpoint. Sometimes they stop and check your ID, and then between Ramallah and Nablus, there is another checkpoint called Za'tara checkpoint. And then entrance of Nablus, there is another checkpoint. So you have to pass 3 checkpoints. Sometimes they just wave to you to pass without checking your ID. But if there is any security issues, they will stop you and ask for your ID.
Merci. Jean demande, que pensez-vous de la position des pays arabes par rapport à la situation en Palestine? What do you think, what do you make of the position of Arab countries with respect to the current situation in Palestine?
You know, unfortunately, I mean, honestly, very newly, I mean, after the Trump administration, when Trump administration came to the government, Arab countries tried to make more pressure on Palestinians than supporting them. I think since 2-3 years, if I'm not wrong, I mean, was very few support from the other Arab governments to the Palestinian Authority as part of their pressure on allowing Palestinians to accept the century deal, or what we call it. So, I mean, honestly, I mean, we can say the only Jordan is the most country who stands beside us. But Jordan is not a rich country like other Arab countries, but Gulf countries, I think, maybe since Corona, they've been not supportive. And you know that there is many Arab countries who did already agreements with Israel. And this wasn't according to what Arab Summit agreed on, that first Palestinian cause should be finalized, then agreements with Arab countries should be implemented. So, I mean, honestly, it's now in these days, it's not, I mean, they're not a real support, especially they support some human work, but not, I mean, a real support that we usually get before a Trump administration.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just, Linda wonders, can you purchase food easily?
Yes. I mean, we have grocery, we have our farmers who do our vegetables, we buy food. I mean, we have no shortage in food, but I mean, our food are expensive. I mean, unfortunately, we have to pay the same prices that Israelis pay, but our income is much less because Israel controls the borders and the taxes. So our food suppliers are expensive, and our salary are, I mean, is very low. I mean, usually it's, if a teacher in a school, he gets $400 to $500 per month. That's our water. We buy it from Israel. Our electricity, we buy it from Israel. There is many products which we're not producing. We buy it from Israel. Anything we import, we have to pay tax to Israel. So it's foods are expensive, but people can find the essential issues. And now during COVID, lots of people start implementing vegetables in their gardens because some people, they lost their works. So they couldn't buy these food supplies.
If I could just interrupt for a second, I think I've now found that little video, and I think I could show it. It's 3 minutes. It sort of shows Michel going around about his daily life, and then that could prompt more questions afterwards. Is that okay with you, Paul and Catherine and Michel?
Yes,
Let's see
certainly.
whether my skills are what I hope they are. Sort of, I will show that in a second here. There we go. I'll do share screen and sound. There we are. Share, and here. Can you see it or hear it?
صباح الخير، كيفك؟ اخبارك جون؟ شو هيك شايف شغل شايف انا؟ والله خفيف. مش زي قبل ما تعرف الكورونا. والله يلا فيها اختفت.
All nod if you can hear it. I can't tell if you're hearing it. Yeah, okay.
ان شاء الله خير، يلا بنشوفك. الله يسلمك. يلا باي.
Michel, life looks so normal in this video. What message did you want to convey?
I mean, this video just to show you about the neighborhoods where I live. It's the old city of Beit Sahur, just to show that we are been in this country since years and years, and these houses which you saw been built in before hundreds of years. And we are, as a Christian community, we have the freedom to do our worship, visiting our churches. This is the other side of the life that we like you to see, because our other side of the life also, it has the limitation and hassle, and we try to this life, we pass it every day, but because we have the hope, we like to show you the bright side of our life.
Thank you.
Grafton, perhaps we could just take a few more of the key questions before we wrap up.
Okay. Kathleen was asking about the relationship between Christians in the occupied territories and Christians inside Israel.
I mean, we have a good connection with both sides. I mean, we have a good connection. Like my church, the Greek Catholic Church, our Patriarchat, our head of our church, I mean, the bishop is in East Jerusalem, but we have also churches in Nazareth, in Bil'in. Father Shakur, he's a member of my church. He's a bishop of the Greek Catholic. So we have a good connections. We have lots of Christian in East Jerusalem get married with Christian girls from here, but they are getting a really very hard challenges, because if you are a Christian young man married with a Christian girl in West Bank, she cannot live with you in Jerusalem. You have to come to live in West Bank. She doesn't have permission. There is many people who've been married by Christian, Palestinian Christian who live in West Bank, get married by Christian in East Jerusalem or in Israeli territories. Till now, their wives or their husband did not get permission to live in Israel. We have a good connection. Many people, I mean, young people get married. We have relatives personally who lives in East Jerusalem. So, I mean, we have a good connection and we get in touch with each other, and sometimes they come and join our celebrations.
Thank you. There are a number of questions regarding Christian Zionism. Linda, so I'll try and combine them a bit. Linda mentions that she saw the documentary Till Kingdom Come, and the American Christian Zionists in that film even refused to admit the existence of Palestinian Christians. Bill wonders, in North America, Christian Zionism is influential. Is it also influential amongst Palestinian Christians?
No, I mean, it's more, I mean, as you know, this is why you heard the voice of Kairos and Sabil, just to show that we as a Christian, we do not support the occupation, and we're not supporting Israel occupying Palestinian territories. So that's why of the main reasons that Kairos and Sabil is there, because to show that we as a Christian in Palestine, we do not support the beliefs of the Zionist Christian in North America. Because for them, they believe that supporting Israel or Jew is just for faith issue. And for us, this is not true. If you really want to believe, you want to follow up your faith, you should look for justice. And that's what Jesus taught us. He taught us doesn't about when he talks about the Good Samaritan. It's not about somebody from your faith. It's about if you are being supportive to your neighbors and to your people who really needs help. And I mean, the Good Samaritan, what Jesus' story said, it's really we are the we will think that a good Samaritan is somebody who helps, doesn't mean about his faith. He cares about the people in need.
Thank you. Pauline asks, can you talk about the media, TV, radio, newspaper, and freedom of speech?
Yes, I mean, if I want to, I can talk in media. I mean, I'm part of the Palestinian task force for reopening tourism, and I did maybe 5 or 6 interviews talking about tourism, about how the governments are not doing their job. So we can talk in TV. I mean, especially in Facebook, we have lots of activists who write about anything wrong may happen, especially socially. So in like any other countries, we have freedom to talk. Sometimes you are not allowed to talk in political issues, or if they feel that this may create some conflict between religious conflict, they ask you to remove it. But I mean, we have freedom of speech and TV, media, and in Facebook and social media.
Okay. I have one last question, and then I'll turn it back over to Peter. Adele asks, how do you foresee the future?
I mean, honestly, this is a very good question. I mean, under occupation, we don't see future. That's why we, as a Christian community, I mean, because we are a minority, and we look for a better future for our children, like any person in this world. We feel that we are threats for our. There is a threats for our future if we stay in the under occupation, because, as I told you, accessibility. We will not have place to build for our children. We're not getting an equal job opportunity because we are under occupation, comparing with the Israelis. So I think if we stay in occupation, I mean, immigration will be more and more. We will reduce more and more, and the future are not that positive, especially with the COVID. It makes it more harder on our life. I mean, most Christian in Bethlehem area, they work in tourism, and now since 1 year, they didn't have any income, and people are really suffering from the COVID, and things are really get worse financially. And you know, everybody is willing to have a better financial status. So in occupation, things will be much better, I think. And this country, honestly, we have a petrol because of tourism. And unfortunately, conflicts make this petrol not effective.
Okay, thank you so much. I see that my friend Curtis Marwood, who was with the United Network for Justice and Peace in Palestine and Israel, wanted to say a word. Curtis, jump in before I wind up here. If you can, please do.
Yes. Thank you, Peter. We are very much in support of the Palestinian Christians and trying to convince Canadians to support them. We have a network of several hundred people that are working on this issue, and so we commend you for your work there, Michel.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Curtis. I'm going to just say a couple more things before I loop back to Michel and the two panelists to thank them. But I want to just can you see that?
No.
No.
You don't see anything. Well, you see, there you go. Share screen. Share. And now do you see what can I do? Hopefully you can see that.
Yes, we're fine.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically, out of this meeting, some people may wonder what they could do to help. I think there's several things. One, of course, is I think that we need to start talking to our friends about the very challenging and unfair situation that Palestinians are facing under Israeli occupation. And for those of you who are active in your church, it'd be good to tell your minister, your priest, that you'd like the church or the parish to take this up more significantly. If you want to become more educated on it, I encourage you to sign up to my website at Canada Talks Israel Palestine, or you can join or contribute to one of the many Canadian Christian organizations, and the one that Curtis just referred to is one. And when COVID is over, go and see for yourself. Get Michel's organization to organize a tour so you can actually meet some Palestinian Christians and show your spirit of love, Christian love and charity. Some of the Christian organizations that are very active in this are represented here. Anjapi, which is Curtis's organization, is in the bottom right-hand corner. Kairos, of course, has been mentioned several times. The United Church of Canada has been very active, as of the Mennonites. There's also several references to Sabeel, and the CNEWA is a papal organization, a papal agency for humanitarian and pastoral support. And in the follow-up email, I'll send you links to all these organizations. Finally, I want to remind you about our next webinar, which will be on June the 3rd. And that's with this very interesting man, Jonathan Cook, who is not Israeli, sorry, is not Jewish, but who has become Israeli over several obstacles, and he will talk about that. That will be an interesting way to understand what it means to be a Jewish state and understand what Michel Awad has been facing recently. So with that, I see now it's 11:18. I want to, first of all, thank Grafton for handling the questions. I want to thank our two panelists, Paul and Catherine. It was Paul's idea to organize this very interesting session, and Catherine jumped to help. Both of you very active in the Christian community in Canada. And then frankly, finally, I want to thank Michel Awad, my old friend Michel, who has been very helpful to me over the years. He's organized many, many tours. Michel has always made sure that we are not only safe, but also meeting lots of people and understanding the very unfair situation facing Palestinians today. So with that, I want to thank everybody so much for attending. And I'm most apologetic to Terry. I'll get back to her. I don't understand why Terry was not able to get on, but I'll follow up with her. So Michel, you carried the freight admirably for the two of you. It meant that we got to focus more on the West Bank and less talk about the dramatic situation in East Jerusalem, where there are rampages through the city yelling death to Arabs, burn the Arabs. It's a very difficult situation in Jerusalem right now. And I'm sorry we're not able to get the benefit of Terry's insights on that. So, Terry is in the discussion now. Terry, Terry, are you there? Terry, you're in the discussion. Can you, what do I need to do to get, I see you're there, but where are you? I don't, hang on just for a second. We may have Terry. We have Terry. I'm sorry, it looks like we don't. I see I'm in discussion, but it's from me to panelists. So I'm sorry. With that, we're going to wind up today. Thank you very much to all for attending. And I will be sending out a recording of this event to everybody so you can share it with
You are muting her, Peter. You are muting her.
I'm muting her. How am I muting her? Hang on, just a minute. Try one more thing here. Chat. I'm certainly not muting her on purpose.
I think she's logged in as you.
She's logged in as me. Here, just hang on for a second.
It's strange.
Terry, is that?
We have two Peter Larsons.
Can you unmute yourself, Terry? Hang on.
Yes, now I am able to unmute myself.
Boy, okay, well, it looks like we're going to extend the session for another 10 minutes or so. If everybody, for those who can participate, Terry, you're appearing under my name, but I'm so happy you're there. I remind you, she's calling to us from East Jerusalem. Terry, first of all, apologies. And secondly, tell us about, you said you've been able to listen for the last while, which is terrific. What is the situation in East Jerusalem now, and what is specific to Palestinian, to Christians living in East Jerusalem right now?
Just Terry, if you can put your camera on, if you can.
I will try. They don't give me the you know, I don't have any possibility for putting my camera.
Maybe you better just speak now, because I'm worried that it's going over time. So
Okay.
I'll send people
Okay,
your...
basically, all right. Basically, you know, I come from the Orthodox community, the Arab Orthodox community in East Jerusalem. And just last Sunday, we celebrated our Easter in East Jerusalem. And it's very fresh in my mind and in my body, how much we had to push our way for the celebrations towards the Holy Sepulchre and what we call the Basilica of the Resurrection in the Arab terminology. And basically, the most important day for us in the celebrations of Easter was the Saturday of Light, where the community for the last 2,000 years have been flocking towards the church, the Basilica of the Resurrection, in order to commemorate the light that came out of the tomb, marking the promise of Jesus that he will, you know, be resurrected on the third day. And every year, and especially this year, we have been really facing more and more checkpoints, Israeli checkpoints, at the entrance of all the old city. If you try to go, you know, the old city have 7 main gates, and the 7 main gates were blocked for the Christians. Although because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there were no Christian tourists coming from Greece or Russia, especially the Orthodox pilgrimage, and we were left alone, you know, the local Palestinian Christians, to celebrate the Saturday of Light, and then we continue with the midnight mass until, you know, we declare with the bishops and the patriarch that, you know, Jesus have risen. And unfortunately, we spent the whole day from 12 midday Saturday until 12 midday the same day, from one checkpoint to another. 4 Palestinians were arrested. Many of them were with their children, you know, well dressed in order to go for the celebration of the light, the holy light, and then staying in the church to pray until the midnight mass comes in. But instead of spending the time with our families, enjoying and be having the joyful experience of the resurrection, unfortunately, we had to spend it, you know, from one prison and detention center to another, pleading and bringing lawyers to release many of our friends who have been arrested and beaten and so on.
Terry,
yes.
I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but I want to make sure I understand what I think you're saying. And that is that as long as there were lots of Christian tourists coming in from other countries, the Israelis were relatively willing to allow you to go to these Christian sites. But now that you are alone, you don't have the support of foreign Christians, they are being very, very dramatic in their attempts to impede you from attending the Christian site. Is that correct, or is that overstating the argument?
No, I think that's overstating, if you allow me.
Sure.
Because basically all pilgrims are always welcomed, and you know, this is the time, you know, Easter is the time for Jerusalem to thrive economically, religiously, socially, culturally, because, you know, we're receiving lots of pilgrims and family members from the north, as you were asking Michel before about Christians inside Israel. That's the time all the eyes all over the world, and of course locally, goes towards Jerusalem. Unfortunately, in the last 10 years exactly, because before those 10 years, we never had such problems of accessing our worship places. Unfortunately, for the past 10 years, we have been witnessing a rise in the number of checkpoints and preventing us to access to our churches, including the pilgrims who are paying lots of money to come for pilgrim in Jerusalem, especially during the most holy day for Christians, which is Easter. And although the Israelis were all the time claiming that the Holy Sepulchre and the narrow roads of Jerusalem cannot absorb all these number of pilgrims, including the Palestinian locals. So they were all the time claiming we need to secure the safety of locals and pilgrims, and therefore we're putting checkpoints and preventing access to the worship places. This year, with the pandemic, there were no pilgrims, there were no foreign pilgrims coming to Jerusalem. And of course, the West Bank and Gaza are already cut off from the rest of the occupied territory. So we were left alone as Jerusalemites to celebrate Easter. And we're talking about maximum 5,000, 6,000 people who were celebrating, let's say, the Orthodox Easter. Coming from all over, the inside Israel, from Jerusalem. Yet the checkpoints were so fierce, were preventing us. They were beating people while they were carrying children in beautiful clothes, going to celebrate and to pray. And now we're going to the Israeli court system. That's part of the steps that we will be doing in order to protest if they want to call themselves a country of law and democracy. We're going to use that as much as we can, but we're also pleading and appealing to the international community, who were many of them escorting us to celebrate the cultural festivities for the Saturday of Light, and they were witnessing the beating and the checkpoints, so that they can also appeal to the Israeli duty bearers about the respect and the need to respect the right to worship and freedom of worship. So in the coming week, and that's why you see me very much passionate about the events that just took place a couple of days ago, and things are still boiling with the international community, with the preparation for a legal case against the Israeli police attitudes and behavior, banning us from accessing the Holy Sepulchre, despite the fact that there were only Palestinian worshippers and no foreign worshippers who would say congesting the roads or the Holy Church.
I want to make very clear, Terry, these are not Palestinian Muslims that are preventing you from going to worship in your sites. It's the Israeli forces. Is that correct?
Of course not. Of course not. In Palestine, we have grown up to understand that the diversity of our country, with the Judaism, with the Christianity, with the Islam, is what makes us different and unique. And we grew up, and especially, in my age, I wasn't growing up with the Jews, because, we only see them as colonists, as settlers. But with my parents' age and my grandparents, we always heard the beautiful stories of celebrating together, both, the three religions. This is the time for Pesach, this is the time for Easter, this is the time for Ramadan. Everybody was enjoying the joyful festivities of, the different religions and cultures. Unfortunately, since the occupation, we have been with, and the rise, of course, of the extreme right, Jewish extreme right, even within the Israeli government, where nowadays you have settlers and colonists who are part of the Israeli government. You are seeing the right-wing narrative growing so strong into the system and preventing different religions and cultures to practice their cultures and religion. And not just like you see the pictures of the Muslims being banned from reaching Al-Aqsa and the Haram al-Sharif, we are, as Palestinians, for the last 10 years, have been witnessing the same systematic denying of access to our worship places. Yes, we are a fewer number than the Muslims, but we face the same problems of accessing our worship places. We Palestinians now say Muslims, Christians face the same as long as you are an Arab, as long as you are a Palestinian. And we are seeing the systematic imposition of the Jewish character of the city of Jerusalem, for example, denying the existence of the original people of that area. Jesus was a Palestinian Christian at the end of the day. Yes, he was a Jew, but he was a Palestinian. They don't want us to celebrate his life heritage. And that's why one of the things that we have witnessed also the week before, during the Easter preparations, we also witnessed the what we call the Jewish extremists running in the streets of Jerusalem, calling loudly "Death for Arabs," and we didn't know what to do, how to behave. And of course, the youngsters were at Damascus Gate trying to defend and to be resilient to protect their own people, their own mothers and their children. And so this is the part of the, yeah.
Terry, if you could send me a short video link to any of this, I could include it in the follow-up email that goes to people, because it's hard to imagine. I totally believe what you're saying. It would be good if we had some kind of evidence that we could send along to people. I'm going to allow one more question from either Paul or Catherine before we wind up here. And I apologize again to you, Terry, that we've cut you short. We're so happy that you're able to join us at the end. Paul or Catherine, you got a question you want to?
Not a question, just a comment to say thank you both to Michel and for Terry for giving us very much on the ground kind of information about what it's like. And for just a comment for those people online who are members of the Catholic Women's League, we do support Velma's Dream in Beit Sahur in Bethlehem, and it's really good to know a bit more about what kind of environment that group is operating in. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Paul?
Thank you. You're welcome.
Me also, I wish to thank Terry and Michel. We have much empathy for your situation. Please continue to be hopeful and resilient and never give up. We pray that an acceptable compromise for all parties will be achieved during our lifetimes. Take care.
Michel, do you have a last word you want to say?
I just want to say
please.
one comment. People's solidarity for the faith of Christianity all over the world is very important. Can you imagine Jerusalem without Christians? Do you want to see Jerusalem with only the stones of the churches, or you want to see the people of Christians, of Christian origin, who have been living with Christianity for the past 2,000 years plus, keeping the heritage and the stories and the life and the message of Jesus alive? That's the most important element that, we Christians in the Holy Land, we appeal to people's conscience, because at the end of the day, we are the children of Jesus. We carried his message, and we want to stay in Palestine and in Jerusalem, and not just to keep empty church stones. So we definitely need your solidarity on human level.
Thank you, Terry. Michel, have you got a final word you want to say? Unmute yourself.
I'm really so happy that Terry, at the end, she could be part of this discussion. I'm sure she could tell more about Jerusalemites who honestly now in these days are facing a hard, challenging, honestly. And they are really heroes on trying to keep connected to their homes and cities. And I would like to thank you all for arranging this to allow our voices to be heard. I'm so happy with the number of attendance. I'm so happy that people are interested to hear more about the current situation. And we always say that come and see. So I invite all of you to come and see. It's different see than hear about the situation. We will be happy to welcome you all in Palestine. And we hope that we will be able to pass this pandemic very soon and get back to our normal life. And we will be able to welcome visitors and tourists to come to Palestine.
Thank you, Michel. Thank you, and apologies again to Terry. We don't know how this happened, but we're so glad you're able to join us at the end. Thank you to Paul and to Catherine. Thanks to Grafton, and have a good day, everybody. We will be sending up a recording of this event to everybody who's in. So, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.